In the past Intel, we missed the big wave like mobile, and then the cloud, AI. So from here on, I said I'm not going to miss any of the big wave.
How do you feel about the fact that you're competing with these people and you're friends with them and they're invested with you? You compete with NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is an investor. Now the government's an investor. And
I'm not the short-term guy. I'm looking at 10 years, 15 years from now. At my age, I can just easily retire. But I decided this is so important. I want to step in and make an impact.
Hi, everyone. This is the TechSurge Deep Tech Podcast, presented by Celesta Capital. Each episode, we spotlight issues and voices at the intersection of emerging technologies, company building, and venture investment. I'm Michael Marks, founding managing partner at Celesta.
If you enjoy TechSurge, subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Visit TechSurgePodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter and find our video episodes on YouTube.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This episode of TechSurge was recorded during the Deep Tech Week conference in San Francisco. Last year, the world purchased more than $790 billion worth of semiconductors. That is up more than 25% in a single year. The industry had set itself a goal of reaching $1 trillion in annual sales by 2030. It is going to get there about 4 years early. For most of the time my guest has been doing this, nobody saw that coming. Lip-Bu Tan has been investing in silicon since 1987, long before this became the consensus it is today. From the outside, he funded the companies that disrupted computing. Now he is leading the one that originally defined it. And that same company might be carrying the most weight in the American technology industry. Intel is the only firm on U.S. soil able to compete in making leading-edge semiconductors at scale. And Washington, NVIDIA, and SoftBank are all now investors. Lip-Bu and I have been good friends for many years. In this chat, we talk about his investment philosophy, what he's bringing from his turnaround of Cadence Design to Intel, and his priorities for the year ahead.
Lip-Bu and I have known each other for, it must be 25 years now.
More than that.
I think it's more than that. We had met early on. Lip-Bu joined the board of Flextronics. And then in 2013, we started this firm, Celesta, together with our partner, Nick Brathwaite. And so we've known each other a long time. So I just want this to be a conversation with old friends. You've done a lot of things. I think it would be helpful for the audience to hear how you got to where you are, where you started, how you wound up in Silicon Valley. Why don't we start there?
Sure. Yeah, I was born in Malaysia, Johor, and then spent my high school, college in Singapore. And then I thought the energy problem is a bigger crisis. So I enrolled to MIT for my nuclear engineering. And unfortunately, the 3 Mile Island accident happened. And then the placement director told me that you should get out of here. And then there's no new nuclear power plant. There's no future career for you. So I said, okay. And I supposed to have a PhD program, so I cut short that. And then, so I wrote only one resume of my life to apply for a job. And then, so they sent a free ticket and hotel to come to California, San Francisco. And I said, why not? Sunday is a good deal. So I came here and I love it here. So I've been here for the rest of my life.
How old were you? How old were you when you got here?
I think it's about 20, early 20.
Okay, fantastic. So you have been a technology investor, a technology pioneer for all these years. What attracted you, to hardware, if you will? You've done a lot of investing around hardware from early on. So what about hardware got you interested?
Yeah, actually, I invest in across the board. As you know, I'm very curious and learn new things. And I still remember I invest in Google for search, but I invest early in that. I invest in LookSmart in Australia.
Oh, okay.
And then the first investment, it returned 10 times the fund. And so the rest is not important. You return the 10%, 10 times, every investor are happy, so I think so far, so I think I always believe in building something that the problem you try to solve, the industry need, and then you just zoom in and focus on whether you find the right people to do it. And that's kind of fun too. And then how to scale it. Learn a lot from Flextronic. Thank you for inviting me to be on the board.
Well, so look, we've been around for a long time, and Silicon Valley started with hardware. And when I listen to some of the debate, you almost forget that Silicon Valley started with Fairchild and National Semiconductor and Intel, of course, and then went through PCs and Cisco and all these the PCs and cell phones and all that kind of stuff, and then for about the last 20 years, everybody's been doing software. And of course, it takes both. And now hardware has become really important. Everybody knows, NVIDIA became the first $1 trillion company, is the most valuable company in the world. And that's kind of changed the whole discussion around hardware. How do you think about that, the transition back to the focus of, I would say, on hardware? Because obviously, we have AI software, but the SaaS software companies have been under stress. How do you think about that from an ecosystem standpoint?
Yeah, it's a very good question. First of all, I thought that semiconductor is hard and deep tech is very important.
Right.
And a lot of application, if you don't have the silicon or the platform, you sometimes, like for example, my phone, I had to have 3 battery because you run out in the middle of the day. And unless you switch off some of the applications. So in a way, I always thought that semiconductor foundation is so important. And 20 years ago, that is not very popular. So I went to some of the tier 1 venture firm friend of mine, and also yours. And initially, the host and a partnership attending meeting with me. Then after I talk about semiconductor, half kind of find excuse to leave the room. Politely. And then later on, only left with 2, sympathetically listen to me. And then, by the way, at the end, is that, do you have any software as service company startup? And so it's not very popular. And then I decided that's why I have the name called Warden, is being a contrarian investor.
Right.
And then you and I would talk, and then I decided to focus on semiconductor. And then even some of my investors thought that, are you nuts? It's a sunset industry, all the tier 1 venture fund is get out of it, and you want to double down, triple down on it. But I believe that is the right thing to do, being a contrarian. And then long and behold, I still remember one of the investment we make together, and then one of the co-investors asking me, name me one semiconductor company that over 1 trillion market cap. And I will try to argue with him, don't shut down the semiconductor part of the business.
Right.
And I'm so happy right now the question is gone. The most valuable company is a semiconductor company.
It really is. Well, one thing that's interesting, and a lot of the investors in media who are here and who are part of this whole Deep Tech Week and these things around, there's a lot of focus on, obviously, as it should be, on NVIDIA and now Cerebras has gone public and all this kind of stuff. These big things, SambaNova, which is on the stage here as well, and all that stuff. And I think people tend to not think about all the little companies, all the little things that take place. For example, you talk about energy use, batteries and stuff. And there's all these little companies that we've invested in together and that the venture guys have invested in, like that make chiplets to take energy out and stuff like that. I like to remind people that the hardware semiconductor space is a big space. It's not just these big companies we know about, but you've been very good at picking those little companies and investing in them early. What brings you to think about it that way?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So, when I started, and I always believe in putting hard work to learn what's going on. And I always have the curiosity of mind. And so when you reach out to me to join the Flextronic board, initially I said no, but later on I decided to
I remember
do it.
that.
Yes. And the main reason is really understanding the supply chain
Yeah.
and logistic, and then how to source the material. That I learned a lot by being on the board and how to scale the operations. And so that teach me a lot. So every time, I always look at the people ask me to join the board, and I want to figure out what can I learn from it. Like Schneider Electric, I thought that very important for me to learn.
Right.
Why on earth Siemens bought Mentor, my competitor, and then this whole electronics, and then with the software for design of the electronics, and also the now the mechanical, digital twin,
Right.
how that tie in together. Why on earth they bought Mentor? So I want to learn what's going on in this whole change. It turned out to be very helpful for me in terms of power management and also industrial automation. So every company I'm involved, I try to understanding what can I learn and what can I contribute.
Right.
And then on the startup side, look back, we've been in the industry for a long time. And I invest close to 550 company. And
550.
so I enjoy doing startup and then find a way, some of this bottleneck, how do you solve that issue? And then learn from it. And then sometimes, the best thing to learn is the smart entrepreneur. They want to do something startup. And
Right.
I learned a lot by talking to them. And then along the way, I accumulate the experience and hopefully can be helpful to them.
Well, the natural follow-up to that is what got you interested in SambaNova, which was, now a hot company, is on the stage, big deal, like a lot of these companies. Our first investment there, which was led by you, was $2 million in 2017. So I think the valuation was something like 12 million or some silly little number. What got you interested in that one? And now you followed it along, and I think you all know, Lip was also the chairman of SambaNova still, and thank you for your work there. But what did you see back then?
Yes, good, interesting question. So, I was early investor in some of the graphic company like S3 and others.
Right.
And understanding the GPU is very power hungry. And so I strongly believe agentic AI is going to be the future. It's much bigger than the training side. And so I thought that this would be interesting to address. And then knowing that GPU is very power hungry. So at that time is almost 10 years, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So I backed two technology that I thought is very useful. One is Cerebras. This is wafer scaling. And it's not easy to do. And I was really admire what Andrew tried to do. So I was investor in Series A. And then same thing with SambaNova. This is the RDU. This is a data flow architecture that you can much lower power performance and much lower power. So I back both of them. And then SambaNova I like because the CEO and two professors came to me about the idea. In fact, I tried to persuade them. Rodrigo, some of you know Rodrigo. He came to my office. He used to be my customer when I run Cadence, and he's a Sun Microsystem. And I said, well, your friends, Umbrella, Fermi, Les Kohn, you and I, we back.
Yeah, we backed the Umbrella.
And then I said, about time for you to come out and do something. And he very curious. Every time he invite me for lunch. Finally, one day he called me, Libo, I'm going to start a company. And with these two professors, with this new disruptive architecture, so I jumped on it after doing some technical review. Mm-hmm. And I thought this is something good architecture. So I've been funding him from Series C, A round, B round, C round, D round, now F round.
Now F round.
And every round I was
Stay
involved in bringing the right investor to come in.
Yeah.
So I'm in the process of closing a F round somewhere between 800 million to 1 billion. And so we are delighted to see finally
that's the
off.
money coming in, not the valuation. So obviously there's themes going on here. Let's talk a bit, if we might, about the global nature of technology. You're from Malaysia. You've traveled around. There's India now is trying to putting a big effort into trying to get more technology, if you will, into the the India ecosystem. We're starting to do work in Canada, as you know, which is another new area. A lot of universities, same as we have in India. There's the political issues with China, which I'm very sad about. I'm sure you are, because we've had such good experiences there. How do you think about, everybody's trying to get Silicon Valleys now, and of course there's going to be more of this because of what's happening with these companies. How do you think about the global aspects and what impacts that has on Intel? We'll get to Intel here in a minute, but how do you think about the global nature of our business?
Yeah, I think I always, have at Warden, when I started Warden, it's kind of, think globally, act locally.
Sure.
And so I always believe in investing, that you can add, hands-on and helping the company. I travel a lot. I invest a
Sure.
lot in Israel.
Oh,
I
right.
invest quite a lot in India, like Maitri and many others.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with China and Taiwan. So, you always think about, where are the best talent that you can get, and then you invest, and then how to scale the business. And then, so I think it's very important to just find the right team to back, and then they are good, in some way, 9 out of 10 investment I make, they change their business plan.
Yes.
And because the market changed.
Yes.
And so I want back the team that is not just one individual, but a team that can really build a world-class company, and then with the right culture. And then it's kind of nice to be a mentor and then helping them to succeed. And so it's always nice to see them go IPO or being
Oh, yeah.
successful trade sales. And it's kind of enjoy doing that. I'm still enjoy doing that.
Well, me too. It's so much fun, and we've backed companies in Israel, in Korea. I think
Yes.
Brian goes in town now from Heidi, and of course India and the United States, and Canada. It's exciting to actually see entrepreneurs from these different places. They bring different things, and you can learn a lot of interesting stuff from them. So I agree about that. Let's switch gears a little bit, and I think everybody knows what a success you had at Cadence, which is a bit different from the early stage investing, but you took this company over. Gosh, I think the stock was like $3 or something silly, but enough, 3,000%. It'd be interesting to hear, I'm sure everybody just be interested, what made that successful? And more interesting, I think, is what did you learn in that process that's helping you today at Intel?
Yeah, in fact, history is interesting. And the former CEO approached me, Lip-Bu, you should join the board. And I said no, 10 times. But they are very
Cadence.
persistent at Cadence. And then finally, I accept to be on the board. And the next thing I know is they asked me, Lip-Bu, can you step in to be an interim CEO? And then
This is
and
a
then
slippery slope, isn't
for
it?
3 months. And I said 12 times no. And finally, they are very persuading. Just do it for 3 months. That 3 months become 15 years. And so the stock I think down to $2.42.
Yeah.
And I was just doing it for 3 months as an interim CEO. And while doing the search for CEO, initially I'm part of the search committee, but I said I'm too busy, focus on customer and products. And so I took myself out of the search committee. And then they continued the search. And one day the chairman came to me with a smiling face. I said, okay, you found the CEO. When they pass the key to, he said, you can keep the key. I said, no. And so long story short, that is 15 years. I think it's managed to help turn around the culture, turn around, focus on the products. And then I still remember the couple of meetings with customer was so mad. He said, not only you have to return the money, and we don't want to use the product. And then each one of them will bring them over, and they become my continue expanding as a customer. And so I think it's kind of first time CEO. I still remember the HR director gave me 3 books, the CEO for Dummy reading. And I read every page. And one thing, look back, without being a CEO before, actually it's my benefit. And I make a mistake in the all hands meeting. I said, well, I'm the first time CEO, so if you have any good idea, send it to me. and I receive 300 email per day.
Per day.
And then I respond every one of them. And then and also some of them I listen to them, have meeting with them. They say, well, Lipo, in the past we dropped a CEO email. We never heard of it. You surprised me. You came out to my cubicle and talked to me. And I learned a lot. And then, so I think the culture of being, listen carefully what people tell you, and then pick up some of the good idea, and then run with it, and focus on creating the best products, and then delight the customer. And I still remember some of the complaint customers say, well, we complain about your product, never heard of it until the renewal of the contract, then you guys showed up. And then, so I changed it. And then the funny part is one of the customers said, Lippo, I don't know what you do with them. I just complain to you, less than 24 hours, people come to office and fix it. So that's a culture of responsive to delight customer. That had been my trademark, being humble, good listening. Every meeting I have, I always will prepare. And then I take notes on some of the customer complaint or suggestion. I follow up, and that's the best way.
And so, and you're known for this, and which is a great thing. Is it the same playbook at Intel?
Yes, very much so, but a little bit more complex, more employees. And then we have the product, we have a foundry business. And so you have to drive success on both sides. And then, again, the same format, change the culture of listening, and then be humble, and then learn from the customer and get some good idea. And then when you show the vulnerability, actually people are willing to come and help you.
You know, for the entrepreneurs in the crowd, I mean, it seems so obvious, but so many companies don't get this right. The customer's right. Go listen to the customer, listen to what their needs are, and try to respond to that. And if you do, that's how Flextronics work, that's how Cadence work, that's how Intel's working. It doesn't seem complicated, but a lot of companies get this wrong.
And in fact, my one biggest competitor at Cadence, he said, finally, I found out your secret. I said, what is that? He said that my customer treat me as a vendor, but the same customer treat you as a partner.
Right.
That's a big difference, because sometimes when they view you as a partner, they share with you their roadmap, and also you can also advise them their customer feedback. So in a way, they feel that sometimes when you run a big company, you are so isolated, and I become their window. So they said that by meeting with you, I learn more about outside my competitor,
right.
The industry trend change.
Right.
And so in some way, I think that helped me a lot when I become a CEO.
That's great. We have less than 10 minutes here. I would like to ask a few things about Intel, but I'm interested in strategic things, not how much the stock's going up or going down. I mean, we all know what that's like. One of the things that I find interesting, because of my background at Flextronics, and of course with you, is that we built that company on an outsource model. And you're doing a bit more vertical integration at Intel. So you're going to not only design and sell the devices, but make the devices. And so how do you think about that vertical integration as opposed to, because you don't have to do that, you wouldn't have to be the device manufacturer. So how do you think about that vertical integration, if you will?
I think, to be candid with you, when I was approached to come and run Intel, and it took me a while to comprehend that. And but at the end, I decided to do it because it's a very iconic company.
Sure.
And then secondly, it's very important for the industry. And then thirdly, it's very important for United States. And so I decided to, at my age, I can just easily retire.
Sure.
But I decided this is so important. I want to step in and make an impact. And so I think that's a journey. I do that. And then secondly, I think it's very important, the product and advanced packaging and foundry, it tie in together, you create more value for the customer. And so I strongly believe that will be the case. But, it's very complex, so you really need to have the best product. Like, for example, we have the very strong franchise is the CPU
Sure.
compute. And over the years, I think we lost that. So I want to really try to focus on getting the best CPU architect to come with me, and the GPU architect, and the system architect and software. You need to have a full stack. And not only for the PC client, they are moving into the agentic AI, the edge, and also the physical AI. That will be the frontier going forward. Then you have to work tightly with all the frontier labs and also the AI lab. And then so all the software development, you got to be plugged in so that you can be really drive efficiency for the new product that you come out with. And then the other part is everybody talking about scale and that server, data center, and cloud. And we have a very strong presence in the server side. Over the year, we make a lot of mistake. Now I need to correct that mistake and then look at next 5 years, 10 years, where the requirement come in and how do you drive the performance, the full stack application and also the layer to make sure that it's really leapfrogging for the next market. And also the cluster, how, the previous panel talking about optical and high-speed connectivity. And that's where I thought that initially, multiple years ago, you and I, we look at this high-speed connectivity is very important. So I back Credo Semiconductor. Now it's about 50 billion market cap.
50 billion today, yeah.
Astera Lab.
Yep.
And then I bet 4 guys when he start from TI. And now it's like 72 billion market cap and it's growing.
These numbers are
And then now the photonics become hot. So I back a few. Celestia.ai, I sold it to Marvell. And then the Dust Photonic, I just sold to Credo. And we benefit from it.
It's nice when we back Credo and then we back Dust Photonics and Credo buys stuff.
Come together.
This is when investing is really fun.
Exactly. So I think that high-speed connectivity become very important. The next thing is the CPU becomes so hot, and how do you do the cooling? So air cooling is the area, then become liquid cooling, then microfluidic cooling. And then same thing with packaging. And then now we're starting to look at advanced packaging. How do you drive that? And we have the EMIB-T, that's the next generation packaging. Now I move into the glass. Then I move into the artificial diamond, become very good insulator. So I invest in that area. So I think you just have to look at the technology. And that's a fun part of it, being a technology investor. And every day I learn something new. And by looking at some of this brilliant startup from Stanford, MIT, Berkeley, and then you're starting to spend time. I spend a lot of time with different professors to understanding what is the next frontier going to be. This is exciting for me to kind of supporting this small company. It helped the big company like Cadence and now Intel. We're going to be connected with the VC community and also the startup community. That's how we don't miss some of the big wave. And in the past, Intel, we miss the big wave like mobile, and then the cloud, AI. So from here on, I said I'm not going to miss any of the big wave. So I want to be really plugged in on that.
If I understood what you said when you talk about packaging, as well as all these other extensions that you're thinking about out of the universities and all that, is a way of making your core business better because you get to fine tune all these things. Is that right? And if you look at new technologies coming out, like not as discrete businesses necessarily, but as technologies that may make your core business more valuable. Is that how you?
Absolutely. So you try to create a bigger platform. Intel, even though it's a very big platform for PC client and server data, but we don't stop there. You have to think about what is the future look like. And then the world is changing so fast, and you just have to be really plugged in with all this new development, new material, and you really need to look at, and then so that you can kind of developing in-house if you can. If not, fund some of the startup. Eventually, I can spin in and then acquire them in. I think that will create a bigger platform.
Well, on that subject of what pieces you might think about bringing together into a company, I do have to go back 50 years or so, if I might. For the crowd here, you may or may not know that Intel, which was formed in 1968, was originally in the memory business. not the microprocessor business. And now our good friend Sanjay Mehrotra, he's over $1 trillion, 1.2, I believe, today, in the memory business. So do you ever give any consideration to going back into the memory business?
Well, the first of all, we are very excited. In the agentic AI and inference, CPU is huge demand. So
Huge demand.
my day is a lot of CEO call. I want to have more CPU from you. So we really drive the CPU, make sure that we meet them. And secondly, some of the new architecture of CPU so that we can meet some of the requirement. And then secondly, I think CPU and memory, I think there's a lot of way we can really do stacking together and also try to find some new architecture for memory.
Right.
And I think in some way the memory, a lot of innovation are not there. So there's some really good area. I used to don't invest in memory because it's kind of commodity business.
Right.
But now become different. There's a lot of new technology
Shocking.
come out. So we are kind of looking, one of my pet projects is looking some of the memory, new architecture. And I think you just saw the news. I hired my good friend, Shoki Lee. He used to run SK Hynix.
Right.
So you kind of know something that I'm thinking about. We're not ready to unfold it. But, I always have something thinking about what is the short-term, mid-term, long-term requirement. And then I usually, when I take a role in a startup company, I usually stay on for 10 years, 12 years. And then same thing for Cadence, 15 years. Intel, when I talk to my board, I'm not the short-term guy. I'm looking at 10 years, 15 years from now. How are you going to build a bigger platform? And then that can be really benefit for the industry.
Right.
And that's something that is kind of fun to be making some small contribution for the industry.
So I didn't know I was going to ask this question, but it does sound like there's a little bit of Back to the Future on that one. Well, look, we got to wrap up a little bit. The last thing I want to mention is and just hear a little bit. All these guys that we've been friends with. Sanjay Mehrotra was at SanDisk. I was the chairman of that company. Now he's off doing Micron. Jensen, we knew him when he had 30 engineers in Santa Clara and so on. Hock-Tan.
Elon Musk also.
Friends. Exactly. And so there's...
You used to be a CEO of Tesla, right?
Right. that was for a nanosecond, yeah. But here we are. And we're all friends and competitors, and it's just this big mix. And I get this question sometimes from the media. How do you feel about the fact that you're competing with these people and you're friends with them and they're invested with you? You compete with NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is an investor. Now the government's an investor, and isn't it just a wonderful thing that we have?
Michael, we have been friends for 40, 50 years now, and I always value friendship. And we still stay as friendship, even though we are partner in multi-area. But always good that Sanjay Mehrotra is a very dear friend of mine, and then with his wife and our family. So I think all in all, I think I don't view them as a competitor. I view them, market is big enough.
Of course.
We just find how to create bigger market for all of us, and so that you can work with friends. And if you remember the research, I'm most connected person, and especially in the technology side. And then so in some ways, it's always good to learn from friends. And some of the friends become very good mentor to me.
Sure.
And turn out to be very helpful in terms of my career development. And then likewise, I'm trying to extend my time with some of the younger CEO, and I really enjoy working with some of them.
Well, I know that there are a lot of demands on your time, and you have to deal with our famous politicians and all this stuff and go on CNBC every other day or whatever it is. I can't possibly thank you enough for carving out some time to do this, my friend. This is a wonderful experience for all of us. Lip-Bu Tan.
Thanks, Rob.
Lip-Bu has been ahead of the pack for nearly 40 years. He's always believed silicon is the foundation and everything else runs on top of it. For the past 20 years, software got the valuations and the capital. He kept writing checks into chip companies anyway, and for long stretches, he was doing it nearly alone. He never changed his mind. It's the rest of the industry that has finally changed theirs. American chip companies took 53% of the global market last year, the highest U.S. share since 1984. The man who spent years explaining to skeptical rooms why semiconductors mattered is now running the most consequential semiconductor company in America, with Washington, NVIDIA, and SoftBank all on the cap sheet. Being right early is lonely work. It's a lot less lonely now. Thanks for tuning into the TechSurge podcast from Celesta Capital. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it, subscribe, or leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. We'll be back every 2 weeks with more insights and discussions of all things deep tech.